Welcome to Synchronize Swatches, your twice monthly dose of coolness. I'm your host, Chip Johnson.
And I'm the other guy, Chris Gregory.
Every other week, we watch an episode of the cult classic 90s sitcom Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and then we record ourselves talking about it.
It's time for Operation Record the Podcast. Are you ready?
Sir, yes, sir.
Gentlemen, Synchronize Swatches. Not a problem.
I've never liked you, Lewis.
Not a problem.
Eat now?
Clean out your locker. You're finished.
I figured we could kick off today talking about the show so far. Like, we're recording episode 11 now. We've got 7, I think, that have been released at this point. Yeah, Love's a Beast is the one that's currently in our current time frame, is the one that's out there. But I just figured we could talk a little bit about what it's been like so far. We've had like feedback from people we know early on, people from high school or whatever, people our age who remember this show. But we've had some folks reach out on social media, a few people that follow us from Europe, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just curious what thoughts you had on the experience so far. I guess it's been like 3 months since we released the first one.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but this is a lot. We've gotten a lot more feedback than I expected,
It's only been a few months that we've been doing this, really.
Right.
And even fewer that have actually been released, because we banked some episodes before we actually launched.
Right.
So it hasn't been that long since the stuff's been out. A lot of good feedback on social media. And I mean, especially the fact that a couple members from the cast of the show actually reached out, which I don't know if we want to talk about that yet, but well,
when this comes out, that'll be in the past anyway. So
yeah, it's true. We'll have released that's right. Yeah, we'll have released the Corin Nemec interview, which I guess was the biggest surprise. I figured we'd get some people like our age, like, oh, I remember that show, and reaching out and maybe following the show, but following the podcast. But the fact that Corin reached out and Troy reached out and expressed interest, that so soon, that really kind of boggled my mind. I mean, that's also like a testament, I guess, to social media and how connected everybody is now, right?
Right. Yeah.
We just put something out there and it can, somebody like them, a cast member can stumble across it. You know, it's kind of incredible.
We talked about it, I think, in our preview, but it's not a show that's like widely, as far as I knew, not widely remembered. But I've been surprised. I mean, just especially the feedback on social media. That's the big thing. Like the responses to the daily reels, and that's become like part of my routine in the morning is putting those reels up. And I like the work that you've done on them, and then actually posting them up. All I do is add the hashtags and some stupid comment to the caption line. But like, it's a great way to start the day. Honestly, just to see a silly little clip from the show.
Yeah.
And it keeps it out there and fresh and, hammered into people's fucking heads. Like, whether you like it or not, you're going to get one every single day.
Shove it down your throats.
Yeah. So, and we're here for the long haul. I mean, we've got 70 something episodes and we have already talked about this is a project we're going to finish,
Yeah.
Hell or high water,
all 3 seasons.
Yeah.
No matter what season 3 may bring.
Yeah, exactly. So I've enjoyed the hell out of it so far. And, it's been gratifying to have any response whatsoever from anybody, online or, even, like you said, members of the cast. I mean, that's crazy. That's completely insane. I never would have thought like 6 months ago when we first started doing this, like, oh yeah, in a couple of months we'll have the lead actors from the show reaching out to us, for God's sake. It's
sitting down and talking with them and having them tell us the war stories from set. I mean, it's incredible.
Who are we to play God with the kid's life?
We are on Synchronize Swatches, Season 1, Episode 11. This one is entitled Radio Free Flamingo. And the German episode title is Radio Free Flamingo. and that translates to Radio Free Flamingo.
I think your pronunciation on the German was off.
Yeah, I got to work on that. This episode, original air date, November 15th, 1990, which I looked into this a little bit, actually, because I noticed that the air dates were kind of not, 7 days apart. This one aired on November 15th, which was a Thursday, and it was actually aired between an episode of The Simpsons and Beverly Hills 90210. So there are 11 episodes into the show, and I assume that was done to try to get some of that audience from, the carryover from The Simpsons and the, people sticking around to watch Beverly Hills 90210 to get some exposure for the show at the time, because this season, the first season of Parker Lewis was the second season of The Simpsons, and that's the one where they went to Thursday night to go head to head with the Cosby Show.
Okay.
Yeah. So this episode, I guess, I think it might have been a repeat of The Simpsons. I can't remember actually now, but they were trying to wedge it in there and get some of that audience, get some exposure for the show 10 episodes in.
Yeah, gotcha.
So, yeah. So this episode is directed by Jeff Melman. This is his first episode directing. He went on to direct a lot of stuff, actually. He did 20 episodes of Frasier. He did 6 episodes of Beverly Hills 90210, 21 episodes of Malcolm in the Middle. He actually did an episode of Men Behaving Badly. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, vaguely.
That was the one with Rob Schneider. And
yes.
I cannot remember the other guy's name now. What was his name? Ron something.
Ron's all I remember. But no, you're right. It was Rob Schneider.
It's completely ridiculous. Yeah, and Justine Bateman was on it. That's right. It was Justine Bateman was on there as well.
Oh, wow.
From what I recall, yeah. So
short-lived show though, right?
It was only on for a season or two. Maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the writers of this episode are Dave Kaplan and Brian Lepan. And this is their first episode writing of Parker Lewis. They also both went on to prolific careers, I guess is an understatement. So like Dave Kaplan was the co-developer and writer on the Connors, that Roseanne continuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he was on there. I don't know if he was part of the original like Roseanne team when they brought it back before it became the Connors, because it was called Roseanne for a couple of years or something, I think.
Right. Before they wrote her off.
Yeah, before they killed her off. So he did that, and I think he was a writer on the Muppets, that show that was on maybe a decade ago. And then he was a co-executive producer on Unhappily Ever After. Do you remember that show? I
do remember that one. Yeah. With that one again, that was the one with the rabbit, right?
Yeah, with Bobcat Goldthwait as the rabbit. Yeah. Nikki Cox, I think, was on that show as well.
Yep, I do remember that show.
And actually, Brian Lepan was also a co-executive producer on that show for all 57 episodes. So they must have, I guess maybe they were, their writing partners on this show continued working together for years after that on other things. So let's get into this. I decided to go kind of light on the episode synopsis here because I wrote this out and I was like, this pretty much gets us going, without getting too much into it. So after incurring the wrath of Kubiak and suffering another locker stuffing, Parker, Mikey, and Jerry stumble across a hidden pirate radio station, KFLM. Modulating their voices, the boys bring back the anti-authoritarian spirit of the late 1960s as Dr. Retro, the Iceman, and the Freshman.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sweet. Works.
Yeah, works for me. All right, cool. So our opening title gag is we go back to the door opening and closing technique that we've seen used repeatedly. In this case, Parker is pressuring Shelley to remove certain items she's packed for a picnic in the back of the car. So the technique we get is the trunk door opening and closing. She's pulling out a chair. He has her pull out a hibachi grill and her boombox. And after each item, that's when we get the title cards. So when she removes her final item, Parker slips his bike into the back of the trunk, and that's kind of the gag there. Yeah. I kind of felt bad for Shelley on that one. I was like, I know. They're going out on this picnic, and she had to take out her chair, her grill, and her boombox. I have no idea what she's supposed to do at this point. But we open in the classroom, and we open on a portrait of Abraham Lincoln as Mr. Loopman gives a dramatic lecture describing the final moments of Lincoln's life. And the students are all paying very little attention to this. Parker's at his desk reading. He's studying Donna Sue Horton, the returning Julie Condra. Yeah. She's adjusting her makeup and her hair. And Parker explains in voiceover that history is his favorite class. not because of Mr. Loopman's scintillating lectures, but because he has a chance to be near Donna Sue and sniff her shampoo.
So creepy.
It really is. Because when they get up to file out, the students get up and file out of the classroom, he takes that opportunity to take a sniff.
It's the chance to be close enough to Donna Sue to sniff her shampoo. Baby shampoo. Figures. Donna Sue! Hi. I was just...
Parker, I am so glad I saw you. You know, you were doing so well in this class, and I don't know Lincoln from a hole in my head. Do you think maybe we could study together or something?
Yahoo! Yeah, sure, I guess.
3 o'clock, bulletin board.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll say, so I guess this is the first time I think this is the first time we see Mr. Loopman, right? As a teacher.
I think he might have been in one of the, he might have been seen, he was in the one, where are we? We're episode 11. He was in the one, he was in Saving Grace, I think. He's the one who came out and was bitching because they were so loud or whatever. But yeah, anyway.
Right. Well, and also was he the teacher that came up through the drive-through?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if he was the one. He wasn't the one bitching. He was the one in the drive-through. He
was the one in the drive-through that was like something about monkey brains, right?
The monkey brains guy, yeah.
That's right. But at the time, I don't think we knew he was Mr. Loopman. But they actually referred to Mr. Loopman.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? It was the same episode, right? Because Parker's like kicked up at Miss Musso's desk. They were looking through all the papers and stuff, and just, they thought they had time because Miss Musso was out.
Yeah.
And he's like, did you know that Mr. Loopman only has one? And then they're interrupted. So this is the Mr. Loopman that only has one something.
Yeah. He only has one monkey brain left.
But that's, now that I'm putting this connection together, it's like, that was like the same scene where she comes in with the school board guys, the window's broken, and then Mr. Loopman pulls up drive-through style. I didn't know that was Mr. Loopman, but now I've made the connection.
They're going to meet by the bulletin board at 3 o'clock. And then as they're making these plans, Parker is yanked out of the classroom by what turns out to be Mikey.
What, are you crazy? I was this close to the love shack.
We gotta fly. Jerry's in trouble.
What happened?
He sat on Kubiak's ding-dong.
Sat on Kubiak's ding-dong. Which I made a note that must have been a very tough line to deliver with a straight face.
Yeah.
Just over and over and over. Sat on Kubiak's ding dong.
I wonder how many takes they had to do.
Yeah.
before Billy Jane did it with a straight face. Because I don't know how you deliver that with a straight face.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they got it in one because they're professional actors. I don't know. I'd be very hard pressed to do that.
Kudos if they did. I
So these two guys, they rocket out of the scene, and we see Kubiak lurching down the hallway, and he rips open a locker and finds Jerry cowering inside, and his face is covered with chocolate. So at that point, I'm confused because they did say that he sat on his ding dong, but now he's got chocolate all over his face. So I don't know if he sat on it, then tried to eat it. I don't know. But
it didn't make any sense either, unless he was like, I've already ruined it. Kubiak's gonna kill me. I
might as well eat it. It's already ruined, Mr. Kubiak. I just thought it was funny because it looked like he had drawn. It looked like when a kid draws a goatee on their face, just like with a marker or whatever. It's so silly. So Kubiak, as he's done previously, grabs Jerry by the throat and picks him up off the ground. But then he's distracted by lights coming from the side, and we see Parker and Mikey have arrived with these car headlights set up on a handlebar, and they're using it to keep Kubiak mesmerized like a fucking deer.
Yeah.
So that tactic is working for them until we see down the hallway Shelley has cut the power to the headlights, and that releases Kubiak from the spell, and he grabs Parker and Mikey and stuffs both of them into the locker with Jerry. So inside the locker, Parker is lamenting the lengths that they go to for Jerry, but he realizes that Jerry is no longer in the locker with them, and we hear him calling to them from off screen. They hesitantly step out into the open area behind the back of the locker, which is a strange thing to think about anyway.
Yeah.
And they emerge inside a dusty, dank radio station. So this studio, it's obviously sat undisturbed for years because the walls are adorned with blacklight posters and peace signs.
Yeah.
And the place is just lousy with cobwebs. And Mikey says, "Whoa, Rod Serling time." So Jerry is at the control panel. He hits play on this reel-to-reel that's on there, and we hear the final sign-off of KFLM radio in 1969.
It's September 24th, 1969. The final broadcast of KFLM 89.8 FM, the underground voice of Santo Domingo. The heat is on. The establishment is closing in. Whoever finds this, crank it up and keep it going. We're signing off. Clapton is God.
Think of it, sirs. A pirate radio station in the bowels of our own school.
So then Jerry pulls a dustbuster out of his jacket and starts cleaning up the board. And Mikey sifts through the record albums. He finds Jimi Hendrix, Cream, and Zeppelin. And in his words, these are, quote, very retro, very current.
I like how Jerry's like, what are those? And he's like,
yeah,
the record albums. And then Parker has to clarify. It's what people used to listen to music on before CDs.
Before CDs, yeah.
And so we need to clarify for audience, CDs were what people listen to music on before streaming.
Yeah, exactly. You punk kids. Keep listening. Anyway, all right. So Jerry starts to point out these.
I guess I'm assuming too our audience is young, which it's not.
Yeah. They're all laughing at the same jokes we are. They're all like, "What about cassette tapes?"
They're all old fucks like us.
Yeah.
There's no kids listening to this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So Jerry starts to point out the different knobs on the board, the volume meter, the mic meter, and then he demonstrates the reverb effect. And his voice echoes out. That sounded really cool, actually, when he turned that on. He's like, reverb. So then he points out that there's a voice modulator on there, which he says they would allow them to broadcast in anonymity. And he demonstrates this by saying, "Come at me again, Mr. Kubiak, in your road pizza." And it's like we cut to Kubiak in the classroom. Like he can hear that. I couldn't tell if it was it meant to be broadcast at that point?
No, I don't think so. I think we were just supposed to get the hint, the feeling that Kubiak sensed it
because he's an animal.
Yes, because it was his response was definitely kind of like this feel a disturbance in the force kind of thing.
Yeah.
Somebody's threatening me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we cut back to the hallway, and Parker, Mikey, and Jerry are debating whether or not to relaunch this radio station. Because as Parker says, he's not sure if anyone still listens to radio anymore. So then we cut to this shot of multiple young women in the hallway pulling radios and headphones out of their lockers and starting to listen to them. And that convinces them that relaunch is the right choice. So then we cut to the KFLM studio and we hear Parker go, "Good morning, Santo Domingo." And he announces this from behind the microphone, and then Jerry warns him not to use his real name because I guess he's about to introduce himself.
Yeah.
So instead, Parker introduces himself as Dr. Retro, and then Mikey leans in and introduces himself as the Iceman, and then Jerry leans in and introduces himself as the Freshman. I really like the way Troy read that line too.
Yeah.
He's just like, "I'm the Freshman."
Yeah.
Just getting into character. So, Dr. Retro announces the relaunch of KFLM, and Mikey just throws his fist right into the screen, like right by his head, and he yells, "Think Pink!" Which I didn't get. I had to go back and look at it. I think it's a reference to an album.
Okay.
I've never heard it before. It's a 1969 album by Twink called Think Pink. So
I looked it up too, and some psychedelic artist from the 60s. Solo artist, but I've never heard of Twink. I've never heard of Think Pink.
If we were any kind of podcast host, we would have listened to it and had things to say about it on the show, but we didn't because we're not. So
we're not. Yeah, exactly.
So
we
Dr. Yeah, exactly. Why are you listening? So Dr. Retro announces at this point that they've got records and DJs and open phone lines. So then we cut to Miss Musso's office, and for some reason they're listening to the radio now. They're listening to KFLM, just apropos of nothing.
I hear from you, Flamingos.
Oh, they'll be hearing from me, all right.
Miss Musso, your eyes. I'm sensing a glint I haven't seen since that time the football team put your face on their tackling dummies.
This radio station is an atrocious offense against the very thing this school was founded upon.
Truth and learning?
No. Law and order. My principal and I thought we had silenced student radio 20 years ago when I was a special obedience helper like yourself.
To think someday I, too, may become...
Nothing. Unless you find them. Find them and silence KFLM.
This is, Miss Musso at her most arch. She's just like the most villainy in this scene of any time. But so we cut back to the hallway and we get our loudspeaker moment that we seem to get every other episode.
Yeah.
And I love this whole sequence. Frank is reading a message to the student body, informing them that listening to KFLM is hereby outlawed. But then he undermines his own announcement by repeating the call letters and the frequency. That's KFLM.
And under no circumstances should you attempt to contact them at KL5 KFLM. That number once again, KL5 KFLM.
So we cut to the hallway. We've got multiple students, again removing radios and headphones from their lockers as this announcement is broadcast in clear defiance of this new rule. And then we see Kubiak rip the door off his locker and he pulls out this boombox and then he throws it to the side to get at the box of ding-dongs on the top shelf behind. Yeah. So he's got backup ding-dongs, I guess. So we're back outside. We're out on the campus outside, and students are rushing to the payphones to call KFLM. And in the studio, we see Jerry is struggling to keep up with the influx of phone calls. Dr. Retro is on the mic, taking calls and giving out advice. In voiceover, he says, "I never would have thought of myself as an advice man. At the same time, who would have thought of Dr. Ruth as a sex advisor?" Which just seems completely unnecessary, man. That's just not cool. Give that lady a break. So Parker cycles through the callers who are on hold, each of them blurting out their problems. And he comes across Kubiak. It's obviously Kubiak ordering 6 cheese pizzas and a Coke. He asks if they deliver. The camera's panning around, and then as they pass by equipment, it's cutting to different shots. So Dr. Retro's on the mic first, and then it transitions to the Iceman, and he's got candles lit all over the place, and he's wearing sunglasses, and he's very sensual, and he's hosting the Coolness Hour, 60 minutes of the purest essence of rock and roll. And he says, "None of that wimped out techno pop lip synced garbage. This hour belongs to rock and roll." And then he leaps up. I love this shot. He leaps up in the air and he starts playing air guitar, and Foxy Lady by Jimi Hendrix was playing. And then Parker runs in with lights and just starts lighting him from below.
It's so goofy.
It's so
He's just
funny.
like walking around with his handheld light, like
yeah.
They're both just dancing around. It's such a weird.
It's a great shot, man. It's so funny. And then it's only outdone by the next shot because we cut to the outside and we have this crew of the most 90s looking kids. I thought the ones from like the episode with Matt Stiles where they were dancing outside were pretty fucking 90s. These kids are fucking 90s.
Yes.
And they're dancing the most 90s looking choreographed dance moves to Foxy Lady, which is just a strange dynamic. At this point, we see Donna Sue is standing by the bulletin board waiting for Parker. So we cut back into the studio, and the Iceman announces, "Flamingo time is 3:45. And then Parker realizes that he's late for his study date, so he rockets out of the studio. And we cut back outside as he's leaping through that dance crew, and he arrives at the bulletin board to find that Donna Sue has already left. So back inside the school, Miss Musso is on the monitor soliciting information as to the identity of these miscreants operating KFLM. And Frank then hands her a piece of paper, and she congratulates the school's Slimnastics team for collectively losing 76 pounds.
So was Slimnastics, was that an actual thing in the 90s, or is that just a word they made up?
I don't know. Maybe. I feel like I've heard the term before.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was a thing in school.
But I was like, it could be just some word they slammed together for the script. But I'm also like, it could be a thing that was it could have been a thing in the 90s. Slimnastics.
Yeah, it sounds 90s. It sounds 80s as hell,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I don't know. So we cut back to the hallway, and Donna Sue is opening her locker, and she finds a handwritten note instructing her to meet me on the roof. So we're up on the roof, and Donna Sue steps out to find fine dining table set for 2.
Parker? Parker.
Donna Sue, I know I screwed up, and this is just my way of saying sorry.
I've got a request dedicated to a very special study buddy.
This is beautiful, Parker.
I hope you like squab.
It's my favorite.
Mental note, get recipe from Jerry.
And I'll note that, you know, Jerry made a big deal about having the voice modulator so they could, you know, disguise their voices. As we're on the roof and the radio is playing, we hear Mikey's voice, and it is not modulated at all. Did he forget to turn that thing on, or
he's just way too into the Iceman mode. So Donna Sue is surprised by this gesture, especially when it is revealed that the meal is squab, which I've never heard of squab. I looked it up, but it is a dish served that's like young, fresh pigeon meat. I've never heard of this, but as I noted here, I'm a rube, so I don't know anything about this fine dining shit.
I've heard of squab, but never went to look it up and figure out what it was. I've heard of squab and just never been curious enough to be like, what the fuck is squab?
Yeah.
But when I saw your note here, I was like, oh, that's what it is.
That's what the fuck it is.
Young pigeon meat.
Young pigeon meat. Yeah. And apparently it's Jerry's specialty, because I think Parker makes a comment about needing to get Jerry's recipe for it. It's Donna Sue's favorite. Donna Sue loves to eat pigeons. So anyway, so the music here is cut short by an announcement from the Iceman that they are temporarily going off the air due to technical issues, but they'll be back once they put out the fire. And Donna Sue is distracted by this announcement, and when she turns back around, Parker's gone. So we cut to the hallway, and Parker arrives just as Jerry and Mikey are emerging from this smoking locker. And Mikey's got a hose in his hand with a hose nozzle. And Jerry informs Parker that Mr. Randall got a little carried away with the mood lighting. Mikey says it helps his groove thing. And Parker says, your groove thing just ruined my chances with Donna Sue. Which I would argue that missing the study date in the first place is probably what impacted his chances with Donna Sue. But, you know, whatever.
Yeah. And also, he didn't have to leave the dinner.
That's true. Yeah. He's throwing blame in a lot of directions here. So Shelley approaches now and asks if they know anything about a radio station fire, and you know, they're all like charred up, you know, so it's I guess they practically have smoke coming out of their hair, but
they got soot on their face.
Yeah, the buds all begin to laugh, and when Shelley asks why Mike has a hose in his hand, he says they're having a little fun with the freshmen. And then he turns the hose on Jerry and absolutely drenches him.
It's great, too. And there's like this gargling noise that, like, because Jerry's just standing there with his mouth open.
Yeah, he opens his mouth. He's like,
you hear it sounds like he's gargling.
Yeah. I love it, too, because then Parker leans over and points on her nose and says, aren't you a freshman? And she turns around and runs off, and she screams mom when she runs away, which is funny too. It's like, you're at school, Shelley. Come on. Can't call for your mom when you're at school.
Oh, man.
So Jerry congratulates them on their quick thinking, but then we hear the barking of an approaching dog in the distance. So they all take off down the hallway, and then Frank emerges from a set of double doors holding a lantern and a bloodhound on a leash. And the hallway is filled with fog, and I made a note here that it's a very London police seeking Jack the Ripper kind of way.
One of my favorite gags in this episode, because it's just...
Yeah, it's a very specific image.
Yes, it's just so goofy. Yeah, and they just, I mean, they smoked it up with the fog machine, too. Like,
yeah.
It just looks great. And he's got a fucking lantern.
He's got a lantern and a bloodhound, yeah.
This is so good. So good.
Yeah, so we cut to KFLM studio later, and at this point, the freshman is on the mic. He's preparing to sign off, and he's got all the standard implements of cartoon radio talk shows. He's got a flute, or you know, one of the whistles that's like beep.
Yeah.
He's got a little cowbell. He's got a bike horn. He says he'll be back at 7, which I don't know why he's broadcasting at 7 o'clock, unless he means 7 in the morning. I don't know, but it's like Jerry, go home, man.
I was thinking 7 at night too, but you're right. Yeah. It might be, maybe he's talking about I'll be back 7 in the morning, but still, that's early too.
Yeah, it really is. So he promises to be back at 7 with the lost Star Trek tapes. He says, on these, we'll hear Dr. McCoy say, he's dead, Jim. So Dr. Retro jumps back on the mic to take more calls. And he selects line 3, which it turns out is Donna Sue. And she's asking for advice in dealing with a guy who is just plain confusing and inconsistent. He makes her feel great one minute and lousy the next. He doesn't realize who he's speaking to. So, so Dr. Retro advises that it sounds like an issue of maturity and suggests that she move on, which she agrees is the right move.
How did he not recognize her voice?
I don't know, man. Maybe she had a modulator on too. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't actually listen to her talk. Maybe he's just constantly thinking about sniffing her hair, you know? So he's just like, whatever.
He doesn't actually know what her voice sounds like.
Yeah, lips are flapping, yak, 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 shoes.
He just knows her scent.
Yeah, she smell that pert.
That's the only way he identifies her.
He's like Kubiak, just like sniffing the air. Yeah,
like,
I don't know. Yeah. Oh, then, yeah, you know, Donna Sue's nearby because Coob's like licking his lips and shit.
Great callback.
At this point, the buds launch into KFLM news the way you wish it could be. So it's not real news, but as we'll find out, the student body is pretty stupid at this school because they share the following stories. Alien spacecraft lands on football field. Kubiak granted statehood. And then Miss Musso says, what the heck? Take the rest of the day off. So when they emerge from the locker a short time later, they find, in Mikey's words, the awesome power of radio because the hallways are empty, except for garbage, a garbage can, and a dog eating out of the garbage can.
And a tumbleweed.
Yeah, and the tumbleweed. The students have clearly taken the rest of the day off. So we cross-dissolve to the next morning in the same hallway, and it's once again filled with students. And Parker finds Donna Sue. And she asks if he's ever heard of Dr. Retro, and then proceeds to tell him that if he treats a girl like a yo-yo, he should expect to get dumped. And he realizes that she was the caller, and she is taking Dr. Retro's advice. And just then, Miss Musso comes over the loudspeaker.
Attention, all students who went home early for the unsanctioned KFLM holiday will receive an F on their transcripts unless KFLM is silenced and Dr. Retro is brought to me. Happy hunting.
Let's see. Since starting the radio station, I've managed to accidentally convince my own dream girl to dump me, Musso to squash me, and the entire campus to call for my blood. Mental note, rethink career in broadcasting.
Yeah, and it's great because they're so irate, instantly irate.
Yeah.
And Kubiak is in this crowd, and he's holding a radio when Miss Musso announces this, and when he hears it, he just crushes this radio and it smashes it to dust. Like, I don't know how they pulled that off, but he's just like, and it just explodes.
It's Koob, man. That's how they pulled it off.
A-Back can really smash the fucking radio.
Yeah, it turns it into his hands.
I know a commercial break is a long time, but you've got to try and remember.
When we come back from commercial, we're on the school roof, and Parker, Mikey, and Jerry are up there observing the student protests out on the quad, when suddenly the door explodes off the hinges, and Miss Musso gives Parker the thumb.
And this is the second time she's blown that door off the hinges.
Yeah. Yeah. The janitors there, the maintenance people there, they earn their fucking paycheck on door repairs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, and what's funny is because, like, the first time she blew it off the hinges, that I commented on this, like, I think that counts as our door break.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have a door glass break in that episode. So I was like, oh, that counts as. In this one, though, she blows this one off the hinges, but we still get a glass break later, which is a great one.
Yeah. It's actually the next scene.
Yeah.
Because we cut to Miss Musso's office, and this is a weird scene anyway. I get, it makes sense being here and everything. It's not like out of place or anything. It's just it's kind of an awkward scene with I don't know. I don't know why it felt kind of strange to me, but because Miss Musso is telling Parker that she knows he's Dr. Retro and she's going to prove it. I guess maybe it's just a very fast scene. It's just, I don't know. Anyway, so while they're talking, Dr. Retro is on the radio and Parker's sitting there. So she decides to call the station and prove that it isn't live. But she's surprised because Dr. Retro answers the phone. When she asks who she's talking to, the voice addresses her by name while identifying himself. But then we cut to the station and we see that Mikey is manning the boards. and feeding responses to her utilizing tapes marked Dr. Retro radio response. They got all this shit mapped out ahead of time.
Yeah.
Just in case, you know? So Miss Musso is completely flabbergasted.
Flabbergasted.
Miss Musso is flabbergasted by this. And we cut to the outside of her office. And this is the scene you were talking about. I love this fucking scene. The door swings open, but like right before it hits the wall, it stops. And then she turns and glares at it, and then it completes the swing and the glass shatters everywhere. It's so dumb.
It's such a great gag. I love it.
Yeah.
This is where they're starting to really play with the glass breaks and like doing different things.
I was gonna say that might be the first like actual like meta door break, you know, or you know, physically impossible door break, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're back outside, and the buds are discussing the necessity of shutting down the station immediately. And Parker's nearly on board, but then he sees Donna Sue, and she turns away from him. So he resolves to fix that situation before shutting things down. And he says he needs a little help from Dr. Retro. And then Frank walks past, and he's got a box labeled Acme Spy Supply. It's very Coyote and Roadrunner.
Yeah.
It's just funny. So in Miss Musso's office, this is a strange scene too, because in Miss Musso's office, the camera's in the box, you know, and he's unpackaging it, and you see him pulling things out, and he's explaining to her all the different radio tracking equipment that he's purchased from Acme Spy Supply. He says he's going to use it to bring the pirate radio station to its knees. And then, for whatever reason, Miss Musso does not give a fuck. Like, all the way up until now, all she wanted to do is crush this radio station. But then as Frank's explaining how he's going to do it, she yawns and says, "I'll be at lunch." So I guess she's lost her passion for this project.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So we're in the hallway, and Frank is working his way through the students in the hallway following the tracker's signal. And he passes by a frightened Jerry, who lets slip with a little eek. And we're back in the studio now. Dr. Retro is back on the air, and he's fielding Donna Sue's call because she's called back. He claims to have spoken to there's a lot of ethics problems here. There's a lot of issues here, but he claims to have spoken to the guy she blew off and says that he's down real bad. And Donna Sue says he should be, and Dr. Retro advises her to give him a second chance by meeting the guy in 15 minutes at the place where he stood her up. She agrees, saying, "I'm in your hands, Dr. Retro."
Not yet.
Sirs, it's Mr. Lemmer. He's using a radio tracking device to find us. He'll be here any minute.
Not necessarily.
Cool, Miss Park. You mean?
That's right. Synchronize Swatches. It's Operation Radio Free Flamingo.
So Dr. Retro explains on the air why it is time for KFLM to go offline, and we see Mikey and Jerry setting up radio equipment in another location. And as Dr. Retro signs off so he can go meet Donna Sue, the phone in the studio starts to ring. And he's already like almost out the door. He's leaving. But he hesitates. And he looks at his watch and he moves towards the door. The phone keeps ringing. He looks at his watch again, and then he finally turns around and decides to answer the phone. And he tells the caller, Dr. Retro is officially off duty, but she asks him to stay on the line because she's run away from home and she's scared and she's at the airport, which, holy shit, she's already at the fucking airport. And she doesn't know what to do. So Parker, being the good guy that he actually is at heart, he's reluctant at first, but he decides to sit and speak with her. So then we cut here between multiple scenes with the phone. The phone conversation is kind of the voiceover here. Yeah. But the other scenes we see are Jerry and Mikey setting up the radio equipment, and then Donna Sue approaching the bulletin board, and Frank closing in with the detector. And outside we see the dance crew sitting around in the same clothes, I might add. It's just their only costumes. And then the angry mob is walking around yelling, "Shut them down!" And Miss Musso is in her office listening to the radio station and growing more and more frustrated because I guess she cares again.
Yep.
And so Donna Sue finally looks around and gives up and leaves. And I think I mentioned there's voiceover throughout this, but it's Dr. Retro basically like listening to this girl talk about the problems and kind of talking her through the reasons that she's run away. So Mikey and Jerry complete construction of this radio station and they high-five each other. And at this point, Parker is able to talk the girl into going home. And the caller thanks him and he says, "Not a problem." And Donna Sue's been listening to the radio I guess since she gave up on him, she decided to turn on KFLM, catch a little Dr. Retro. When she hears this, she makes the connection and realizes that Dr. Retro and Parker Lewis are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's obviously been watching the show too. So she's heard the catchphrase.
She knows the catchphrase.
Yeah. So Jerry and Mikey arrive back at KFLM to report on their success, and they all jump on the mic one more time.
Okay, gentlemen, it was fun while it lasted, but let's shut her down. Continuing its grand tradition, KFLM is signing off the air for now.
The establishment's closing in, my brothers and sisters. We're cooling our tubes.
We have a whole decade ahead of us. Save the planet.
Defy authority.
And watch your cholesterol.
KFLM, signing off.
It's 35 years ago, and we're still trying to save the planet.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
He says we have a whole decade ahead of us.
Yeah.
What do you think
I think it's just because it's 1990, so it's the start of the 90s. That's the only thing I could think of.
We have a whole decade. Yeah, okay.
Unless he was like early on that Y2K thing.
We have a whole decade ahead of us. After that, we're all fucking dead.
Yeah, we're fucked. You guys don't know about it yet, but there's this Y2K bug. Jerry was telling me about it.
Yeah, Jerry knows all about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Save the Planet is like, oh yeah, we haven't come very far.
Yeah. Yeah, it sucks. So Jerry flips a switch, which fires up the Phantom radio station, and a on-the-air light comes on in that room, and a record starts to play. And in the hallway, we see Frank. He's walking along with his tracker, and it suddenly spins him around in the other direction, which he moves off in. And Jerry shuts down the real KFLM. So we're in the hallway. Shelley approaches a door, and behind that door, she can hear a record playing, hear that record playing. And she says, "My brother's a dead man." And she runs off to find Miss Musso. And as soon as she's gone, Frank approaches the door, led by that detector, and he kicks open the door and walks inside. And then we see Miss Musso marching down the hallway, trailed by Shelley, and Shelley is super pumped. She's so excited by this. So I made a note on here. I called this KFLMer.
Dude, that was
KFLMer.
Frank, I saw that.
Frank sets down his detector and puts on this set of headphones. I don't know why he did this. Frank is just fucking himself completely right here. Yeah. But he flips a switch, and he finds a sign on the desk that reads, "Frank Dr. Retro Lemmer." Now, as soon as you see that sign, if you're Frank, do you not just turn on your heel and run the fuck out of that room with the sign in your hand?
Obviously a setup. Yeah. Like, why does it not just run?
It's like, Frank, for God's sake, man. You want to be in this
together, man.
Yeah. You want to be in the CIA? Yeah. I was very disappointed in him, but, so when he flipped that switch, the sign off message began to play over the radio. And as the door bursts open again, it reveals Kubiak and the mob, and then Miss Musso and Shelley slide through them and enter the room, and they find Frank standing there holding the sign, listening to the message, and wearing headphones, looking guilty as fuck.
Frank, I'm beginning to understand why it took you so long to find the station.
Miss Musso, there's some mistake.
Yes, Frank. You've made a big mistake. Have your fun. Then bring him to me. Oh, and about your midterms? Don't worry about those Fs. I'll have my revenge in other ways.
And, I mean, I give them credit for not, like, looping in some sound of Frank screaming or something, because that would have been pretty morbid, but that crowd is going to fucking kill him. There's not going to be much left of Frank. It's a good thing he's undead.
Yeah, because Kubiak's in that mob, too.
Yeah, and we just saw him smash a fucking radio with his bare hands. So you cut back outside, and Parker approaches Donna Sue, who's sitting with her radio, and she refers to him as Dr. Retro, revealing that she has figured it out. And she says it's a shame that the station had to shut down, and asks him if it'll ever be back. And he says, "You can only hope, Donna Sue." So she solicits Dr. Retro's advice for dealing with this boy that she likes, since she can't tell what he wants. One second he treats her well, and the next makes her feel like crap. So he tells her he doesn't think that'll be a problem anymore, because the boy has learned that sometimes you have to take a moment to stop and smell the shampoo. So he goes in for a kiss, but instead satisfies himself with another huge whiff of her hair. And then they walk away together. And the song, what was the song called? Dedicated to the One I Love. Yeah, Dedicated to the One I Love plays. It's actually kind of a sweet ending, even with that little hair sniff.
Yeah.
Because he puts his
nothing
arm
wrong
around
with
her.
sniffing some hair.
Yeah, sure. As long as it's consensual.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's one thing you can take away from this podcast, consensual hair sniffing.
Yes.
So they walk off. Parker puts his arm on her shoulder. So then we get a reprise of the credit gag. Shelley and Parker are packing for another trip. And this time she tells him that this time he has to take out some of his stuff. So he agrees and tells Jerry that he can ride up front. And then Jerry emerges from the trunk of the car.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but I played it back a couple of times. But like, as Troy gets out of the trunk, he actually like shoulders right into Maya's face. So
Oh,
he
no.
like nails her.
I'm gonna watch it.
But she doesn't break character.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, his shoulder just fucking nails her right in the face. And
Oh,
I played
no.
it back. I was like, oh shit.
I'm gonna watch it real quick. Poor Shelley. Popped her right in the face.
But like I say, Maya doesn't break character. She she takes the hit and just like, but then does the whatever look she's supposed to do, like a look to the trunk or something.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh man, he nailed her.
Yeah. So Jerry emerges, hits her in the face. The end.
What have you got to say for yourselves?
And that's another good one, man. I mean, it's it's definitely they hit their stride a few episodes back, and it's like these are the Parker Lewis episodes I remember, and I definitely remember this one. Just, I mean, and that was kind of I feel like it was kind of a trope in the 80s and 90s, right? Like finding the pirate radio station.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that was a big thing.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of baby boomers looking back on the 60s and in the 90s and 80s, you know.
Yeah.
Thinking about their youth and shit, you know.
Yeah. Do you remember Pump Up the Volume?
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like what this is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very similar, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. You know, it's like you said, kind of a trope, but
yeah, fun.
It was a fun episode anyway, you know. It's fun to see them playing different characters, you know, what each of them would want to project themselves as, you know.
Their DJ personas.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Freshman.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that Jerry couldn't do anything better than I'm just the freshman. You know. The freshman.
And then we're taking it up to the next notch with the door glass break, you know, like this is where it starts to get like more of a like you say, a little more meta, a little more like of a gag, because like the door swings open, but it stops short of hitting the wall and breaking, and she just shoots that Miss Musso look at it and scares it into finishing.
And the door gets scared. That's the best part. It's like the door
it's so good.
Can think of things. It's like, oh my God, better smash myself.
Oh man.
Yeah. I don't know if Donna Sue shows up again after this episode, but it was nice to see her used.
Yeah.
You know, because in the previous episode, she only had a couple of parts, you know, and she was basically just there to look sexy or whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, and, you know, to be the object of his affection. Well, she isn't here too, but I mean, she does more in this episode, you know.
Yeah, she has more lines, more input.
Yeah.
She's more of a character. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the next Synchronize Swatches.
It's that time of year when the geeks rejoice. The science fair is approaching. The rivalry between Grace Musso and Dr. Pencow heats up. Both sides are confident that their schools will win the science fair, and they place bets on their schools. With the threat of failure, Jerry, Santo Domingo's best chance at winning, spirals downward and causes Musso to panic. When she realizes that Santo Domingo will lose and Pencow is without any promising projects, the bet changes. The school with the worst science project will win the bet. Yeah, it's a fun one. I've watched a few ahead now at this point.
Yeah.
And this is a fun one. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be good.
But yeah, I Garrett Graham returning as Dr. Pencow, it's always a good time.
My brother's a dead man.
friend Jerry said you guys were going to do something really neat today.
Flabbergasted.